Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, December 9th meeting of LAFCO. I will call this meeting to order and ask for roll call, please.
Good morning, LAFCO commissioners. Commissioner Kahn.
Here.
Commissioner Moeller.
Here.
Commissioner Painter.
Here.
Commissioner Ramos.
Here.
Commissioner Chair Cottrell.
Here. Please. Sorry, go ahead.
Just want to get into the record that Commissioner Leary and Commissioner Gallagher are not here today, and we have a quorum. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we will move to approval of agenda. I will consider approving the agenda, but first want to make sure, are there any questions or comments about it before I do so? Okay, I will go ahead and ask for a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I did not catch. Thank you.
We'll go Mueller, Ramos. Great. That is approved unanimously. Any public comment here this morning or on the phones? Okay, great. And now I'll move to agenda item number 5, consent items. Do we have any public comment on the consent items? All right. Any questions or a motion from the commission?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you. Approved unanimously. That moves us to item number 6, action items. We'll start with 6A. Good morning, Brendan.
Good morning, Chair Cottrell and members of the commission. I'm going to keep my part brief on this item because we have Auditor Controller Tracy Schultze here who knows the numbers in this report a lot better than I do. So I'm going to hand over the floor and let Tracy take the floor. So thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. Good. Nice to see you all again. Tracy Schultze, Auditor Controller. I do have some nice bound copies because I know you like to keep all these in your library at home. So once I'm done with this, I'll give them to the secretary here so we can distribute those. So this is the fiscal year audit ending June 30th, 2024. And once again, it's a clean, unqualified opinion audit, which is what we want to see, right? There's no material omissions or misstatements that the auditors found when they examined our books, which is great. So I'll just walk through it really quickly. You all, I'm sure, read it from cover to cover in your packet. So when you open up the financial section, page 1 is the independent auditor's letter, and that's where you will see in the second paragraph that they have said that in our opinion, the basic financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the government. So that's the good, clean audit. Starting on page 4 is a management discussion analysis. This is where, and I'm sorry, I don't know what the page is in the packet. So I don't know if you're all there. 47. Okay. So the management discussion analysis is the story behind the numbers. It's the comparison of the last 2 years. And it gives you a nice overview, kind of historical reference to what LAFCO is for the readers. And then on page 5, you can see your financial analysis from 2 years, 2024 ending June 30th and 2023. And you can see it's very similar. Not a whole lot of change between the 2 years, pretty static. And same on page, or the following page, where it's the statement of activities, you can see your revenues and expenses. And again, there hasn't been that much of a change. An increase of only $5,000 over almost $6,000 over the last year of net position at the end. For governmental accounting, we have to present your financial statements in 2 different ways, so it's really confusing. Sorry, I should have put the reference numbers on the packet, but on page 8 of the report is the statement of net position. So I'll let you get there. 52? Okay. Okay, good. So on this one, so there's two different financial statements. This is what's called government-wide. And for governments, what we have to do is we have to show, most of the time you only look at your short-term assets and liabilities, anything that's available within 120 days at the end of the calendar year. But our government accounting standard boards wants us to show it two different ways. This includes long-term assets and liabilities. So the only thing that's really different on this is the leased assets. So it's a new pronouncement that we have to record is the leased assets, the value of those assets and the liability of those assets. So that's what shows up from this one compared to the next presentation. So this is your assets and liabilities in net position, and you see most of your assets are cash, and then your leased asset. And the liabilities are just short-term accounts payable, something that was due at the end of the year that we didn't get the invoice for the following until the following year, as well as any leased assets going out, the liabilities. The next page is your program expenses and revenues. So you can see where you spent the money and where the money came from. And then you'll see the next page is the same assets and liabilities without those leased assets. So it's two different presentations, all the same numbers. They just like to confuse you. The next page is a reconciliation between the two. So if you did get confused, you can look at that and see, oh, that's why the numbers are a little different. Okay. So that's your financial statements. After the financial statements, there's notes of the financial statements, which goes really into detail about the accounting procedures. And then way in the back, there is a budget to actual schedule. And then finally, there's a report on internal controls, which is also very good. Also attached to your agenda item besides the audit is a required letter from the external auditors. It's a required communications saying if they incurred any problems getting all the information from the audit, and of course they did not. You have wonderful staff leading the agency, and everything was presented very well and orderly and easy for them to follow. So it was very smooth. And then the last thing is this wonderful graph that hopefully everybody has. So this is just a picture of 15 years of fund balance, just to kind of show you the trend. And you see on the bottom, the revenues are the blue line. Hopefully you have it in color. The expenses are the pinkish line, and the ending fund balance is in yellow. So obviously when revenues are higher than the expenses, your fund balance is going to go up and vice versa. So you can see the trend line. We try to make the fund balance kind of stable, and that's how budgets are prepared for following years to see where the fund balance is. One of the only bigger changes this year that you had was you released that restriction for the filing equipment replacement. So we did carry, if you see in the third row of numbers there was a restricted equipment replacement reserve, but you took action to release that restriction and just put that into available fund balance. So it just carried down. So that's it. That's your audit in a nutshell. Do you have any questions for me?
Are there any questions from the commission? Commissioner Painter.
I'll just ask one super minor question out of curiosity.
Yes.
What is the leased asset?
Sorry. Now I got to refresh my memory. So the leased asset, is that the electronic document management system we're talking about?
No, I believe that's it's in the notes. I believe that is.
Or Xerox machine.
Xerox,
It's
probably.
It's your Xerox machine, but it's also probably your rents.
Yes, the rents, sorry, that showed up as well. I noticed the numbers certainly included the rent amounts.
Yeah, so if you look on page 18 of the audit report is the long-term liabilities. And so we have the lease agreement for the building as well as the Xerox machine.
And since we have you, Ms. Schulte,
Yes.
I'm curious, and thank you. It's always great to have you here, and I feel like we learn something every time. Can you walk us through a little bit of the why, just why we have, because you're right, it is confusing to have these two reports that say almost the same thing with this extra piece. So help us understand the utility of that.
So it's regulated by government accounting standards boards. So most governments in the past, well, everybody operates on a fund basis. So, and governments, if the way that this is a point in time, and so fund accounting is anything over, and we have different. We could establish 60 days, 90 days, or 120 days at the end of the fiscal year. We establish 120 days because we still have a lot of things coming in July and August. But once that 120-day mark happens, it's basically to the readers, this is what's available as of right now to provide services as a government June 30th of the following year, or of the fiscal year. But what GASB, Government Accounting Standards Board, said started back in 2004, and now they just added leased assets on, said, well, wait a minute, you have liabilities way out into the years. A big one was pension. So nobody recorded pension. Nobody recorded, and that's when a lot of governments started going under because they had all this pension liability and a huge retirement, and so they didn't have the liabilities on their books, so it was a shock to everybody. So in governments, we don't really record the liability for pension other than this government-wide second presentation. Same with long-term debt. Long-term debt was never put on the government's books, so people could go out for bonds for 20, 30 years, and that would never show up in the financial statements. So these rules keep incorporating more and more, and every year they say, oh, wait, we have these long-term leases. Why didn't we record those? So that's what they're doing. They're in the county, it's a little bit more obvious because we have all these different funds and all these different reports, and then you have literally 4 pages at the beginning of the county's book that condenses it all together with all the long-term liabilities. For small districts like this, it seems kind of silly because it's like one thing, but it's still important and it's still following the rules. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It's two important perspectives on it. So,
exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. No other questions? All right. Okay. And so the action item there is just a receive and file. So thank you so much. And also kudos to staff for a great looking audit.
Yes. And I'll leave these for anybody who wants them.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Is there a test at the end?
I will just ask if there's any public comment in the room or on the phones on this interesting issue. All right. That will move us to item 6B, consideration of an ad hoc, the subcommittee appointments for the ad hoc.
Just a quick question for council. Do we need to do a motion, second, and a vote on the audit report?
I certainly could file it, but I don't think that's been the practice in the past.
Okay.
So
Just wanted to be sure we didn't miss something important there. So moving on to item 6B. This is an item that we typically handle in December each year to set up our various ad hoc subcommittees for the upcoming year. And that involves the commission formally appointing 2 members to each of these committees. And the committees will advise staff by way of occasional meetings, which are not public meetings, as well as informal ongoing communication. Again, the ad hoc subcommittees are all an advisory role to staff. Now, quick note that given the light attendance at today's meeting, as well as the current vacancy in our alternate city member seat, we may want to continue some of these committee appointments to the February 2025 regular meeting, which would provide other commissioners an opportunity to step up. So keep that in mind, and I'll come back to that. The first of the 3 committees that the commission will consider today and described in the staff report is the policy committee. And the policy committee was discussed at the last meeting in October, at which time Commissioners Ramos and Gallagher expressed interest in serving. The staff report lists a handful of policy issues that should be addressed through the committee's work. And the commission's current policy manual is attached to the staff report. Notable policy issues relate to our agency's financial management, outside service agreements, disadvantaged unincorporated communities, CEQA, legislation, and more. And I also want to highlight a recent discussion that involves the Airport Land Use Commission and their staff. And As some of you may be aware, the draft Airport Land Use Commission plan has been presented recently, and it includes language related to a conceptual requirement on local government agencies related to sphere of influence applications. The idea is to allow the Airport Land Use Commission to be part of these discussions that are related to future boundary changes and land use actions at the earliest possible stage to ensure consistency with their own airport compatibility zones and so on and so forth. Notably, only LAFCO has the authority to consider actions on sphere of influence applications, meaning the Airport Land Use Commission does not have the authority to impose SOI application requirements on other agencies. To solve this, or to help, your staff has suggested that we incorporate similar language to what they are trying to accomplish into our own policy on SOIs, which would accomplish their goal. And their staff was agreeable to this approach, and they will provide draft language shortly. And so your staff believes this type of communication and collaboration can only result in better cross-agency effectiveness for the benefit of all of Napa County. So I just wanted to note that as what I see as a recent success story. And part of that is the education and outreach efforts that we've struggled with for many years to find what's the best way to do that so that our other local agencies are aware of LAFCO and can work with us well. So with that in mind, staff recommends the commission appoint 2 members to the policy committee at today's meeting, and that would allow this committee to get started on its work immediately, which in a moment I'll get to why that may be important. So next up, and I'll take these all at once now, unless the commission would like to break them up and take them one at a time. So I'll look to the chair. Do you have a preference?
I'm going to look for, it looks like there's a question from Commissioner Khan.
So the policy manual is like 70 pages long. And so one thought I have, because there's a lot of information, if you have 2 people on this, you might want to have an alternate. Because if somebody's not available, because this is a huge document to go through. And so I just thought maybe an alternate to add to that would be useful.
Yeah, so as long as it's less than a quorum, I don't know if you've had alternates on your ad hoc committees before. I'm getting some head shaking here. So yeah, it's a Brown Act issue with the posting the agendas.
No, but that's a good point about there's going to need to be some flexibility in scheduling. Commissioner Mueller, did you have a?
Well, and I just wanted to respond to Commissioner Khan. So Commissioner Wagon Connect and I went through all of these policies over a 3-year period, and we just really kind of wrapped it up a few years ago. So I think that for the most part, that when you read through them, there's not going to be a lot that staff really brings forward. There are a few that do need a couple updates with some more recent things that have kind of come up, but it isn't like a major rewrite at this time of 70 pages.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Because I looked at this and I said, this is a lot of detail.
Yeah, we were very busy for those 3 years doing
Okay,
that.
so it's maybe just those few items. Thank you.
More
That's
than
very
likely,
helpful.
right.
And I had a comment and a question. You mentioned at the beginning that the ad hocs are advisory to staff, but it's my understanding they're actually advisory to the commission, so that they would come back with and be part of a staff report back to the commission, and the dialogue would be there so that the commission would get a chance to weigh in on the suggestions.
Well, I will defer to legal counsel to help with the specifics there. My understanding is the committee works with staff closely behind the scenes, and then staff comes back to the commission with recommendations. So it's not actually the committee technically with the recommendation, but I'll let legal counsel chime in.
Yeah, you're correct. So the ad hoc committees don't have final decision-making authority on anything, right? So they're going to meet with staff and could also meet to discuss these things on their own, although it's likely with staff. And then whatever comes back for final adoption would have to come back to this commission on an agenda.
Mhm.
So at some point, there'll be a revised policy or an official recommendation for some new action or direction, and then this commission would vote on it as a whole.
Got it. Thank you. And then apologize, but I wasn't quite tracking the example that you used with the ALUC. So could we go back over that if the commission could humor me on that? And
Absolutely, Chair. So the ALUC has presented a draft plan, which is an update to a previous plan they adopted. I can't recall when, but it's overdue for an update. And one of their action items, it's a land use action item. It says that if any local agency or LAFCO, I believe is the language, applies for a sphere of influence amendment within the airport and compatibility zones or within their scope, wherever that area is, that first the agency would need to come to the Airport Land Use Commission and seek their confirmation that the sphere plans are consistent with what they're interested in. So that is not something they have any authority to impose. They can ask for it, but they cannot force a local agency to do that. Certainly that's a LAFCO issue. Spheres of influence are LAFCO's sole, or we have sole authority over any action related to a sphere of influence. So I don't know if that answers your question. I can.
yeah, no, that helps.
Yeah.
So I think because what they're looking at is updating their ALUCP, the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. And so what they're probably asking for is that if a municipality or a local government agency wants to expand its sphere of influence, they want to say about the conflict between that and their plan.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And so I did check with the legal counsel briefly on this issue, and so certainly counsel confirmed that LAFCO has the sole jurisdiction over these sphere actions. We also had just for the benefit of counsel, there was follow-up to when we had discussed. So the initial thought was this just doesn't apply to LAFCO at all. However, I had some follow-up in discussing this with City of American Canyon staff and their attorney, and they pointed out there was a comment from ALUC staff. It was a response to a public comment on this very issue, and in their response to the comment, they reiterated their intent that this would be a requirement in their plan. It was something that I caught at the 11th hour. I attended their meeting, whenever that last meeting was. I've lost track of the dates, but commented during the item, and they took it to heart, and their staff reached out and met with me the next week. And so we're all agreeable at that level, and the commission itself was agreeable to that approach, to have us just incorporate this in our policy and ensure that their goal of having that early look at projects before it gets to be too late for them to have their say. That's their goal, is to catch boundary changes and land use developments early. And so this will be a way to help them achieve that.
Got it. Counsel?
Yeah, I would just add briefly, you're probably used to the Airport Land Use Commission weighing in on things like general plan amendments or zoning text amendments or anything that happens within that state law designated area around an airport. So I think my reading of their revised plan is that they wanted to have input in that process, but it's very clear they can't impose that requirement on you all, right? So you don't have to go to them and ask for permission to change a sphere. They could probably impose that on other agencies to come and talk to them first, but not on you all.
Got it. Okay. I think that makes sense. I appreciate understanding that because I know that's something that's developing right now, that update. And so it's helpful to know where things are there. So, all right. Are there other questions or Mr. Freeman, do you want to walk us through the next steps here?
Well, so the next steps will depend on the commission's preference with how to handle this. Would you like to vote on each committee separately, and then I will do the next part of the presentation, or do you want me to just wrap up the other two committees now, and then you can consider your action?
My thought is to take them one at a time and just kind of make sure that we're tracking, but I'm happy to do either way.
Sounds fine to me.
Okay.
Sure. So then a motion and a second and a vote would be great on the policy committee. And as a reminder, commissioners, it was Ramos and Gallagher had volunteered or indicated interest, I should say.
Great. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
All right. We have a motion by Commissioner Mueller, second by Commissioner Painter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Ramos, and in absentia, Commissioner Gallagher. All right, so that will move us to the next one.
Great. So next up is the Budget Committee for fiscal year 2025-26, which will involve the development of a budget for LAFCO, as well as consideration of our adopted fee schedule and development of a new work program. Now, that work program piece may at some point shift depending on the policy committee's work, and that's something that I'll discuss with Commissioners Ramos and Gallagher, as I believe there's a better place for the work program to be developed, but that is to be discussed and determined. For now, that's in our local policy that the work program is part of the Budget Committee's work. The Budget Committee will assist staff in presenting a proposed budget in April and a final budget in June, meaning the commission does have time to wait until the February meeting to appoint 2 members if desired. This may be beneficial if the policy committee has a strong recommendation to amend our adopted budget policy and give direction to the budget committee prior to all of this work. So that is one reason this item may want to wait. We may want to wait on appointing 2 members to this committee, as there's not a pressing need to have them start their work immediately anyway. So happy to answer questions or add more detail if interested on this one.
Commissioner Mueller.
Thanks for that report, Brendan. I think that's what Brendan's recommending is a really good idea, because I think we had to kind of flip-flop on the budget last year because of conversations with on this commission about how we wanted certain things to be set up. So I think the budget committee, whoever they are, will benefit a lot if maybe that could be a priority for the policy committee to take a look at
Okay.
first, especially considering the time frame.
Okay. I'm fine with that. Commissioner Ramos, I'll look to you as someone who just got appointed to the policy committee.
I would agree. I
Okay.
think that waiting until our February meeting would be prudent.
Okay.
Yeah,
Commissioner Painter.
and I agree as well. One question is when the vacant seat will be filled, and will that person be available for consideration in February?
Great questions, Commissioner Painter. I'm going to look to Commissioner Moeller in her role as a mayor and member of the city selection committee. So typically what happens, I will send a letter this week to the city selection committee saying we need appointments for these 2 seats. They will schedule a meeting usually in January to make the appointments, at which time it is automatic. We'll have to do an oath of office at the February meeting, but they'll officially be a commissioner by then and can be appointed to committees. So if I misspoke, Commissioner Moeller, feel free to correct me.
Well, typically we kind of set up our meetings on an ad hoc basis, but I know we'll be meeting probably sometime in January for the MTC position. If this is pressing and ready to go, we could do that. I know St. Helena has a council member who has resigned, so they're going to have an open seat that might play a role. So I really can't, I don't know. But the city selection committee, we're pretty nimble and we can meet pretty quickly as need arises. So
That makes sense. I think we've heard some good reasons to do that. One question I had, I believe that Commissioner Mueller and Commissioner Leary were on the budget committee the ad hoc last year. Is that correct?
correct.
Yes, correct.
And would you have an interest in serving in 2025?
I think I would like to maybe let somebody else have that opportunity if they would like.
Good. Okay, good to know.
Because I might be willing to help out with the ledge committee. We'll see.
Okay.
just willing, because I've been on that and the policy committee and a lot of stuff. More than happy to help out, but more than happy to let some other
Give someone else
people.
a turn. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
They're interesting. I think they're very exciting myself. And I think, that, you really learn a lot and you can have a lot of, influence, and really it's a fascinating process. And I really encourage everybody to not look at it as an odious task, but actually I think they're very exciting to kind of be on and dig into how all the nuts and bolts work under the hood. So
Great. So I think it's helpful to know that you're not necessarily interested in throwing your hat in the ring for budget too. So for the rest of us, we can take that, and also I think that's another reason to wait until 2025, and we can talk about who'd be interested in that. So great. Okay, let's move to the third one then.
Well, great. So the third one, finally, we have the Legislative Committee, which is also it's very active and can be an exciting committee depending on what bills come through the pipeline. And the Legislative Committee's work follows from our adopted local legislative policy and legislative platform. And the committee will help staff make recommendations to the full commission to support, oppose, or watch with or without amendments, legislative bills throughout the 2025 calendar year. So we have this committee set up to be based on calendar year legislative sessions. And so bills affecting LAFCOs are typically discussed by the Legislative Committee starting around February, perhaps March, meaning this is yet another committee that really could wait until the February meeting for appointments if desired. And I will note that Commissioner Leary, absent today, did volunteer for this committee at our October meeting. So that's something to keep in mind. If we don't have anyone else who wants to jump on it today, then staff would recommend we wait and give the full commission a chance to speak up.
Commissioner Painter, did you?
Yeah, I'm fine to wait. I just wanted to also say I've served on that committee since 2020. So like Commissioner Moeller, I think, it's good to sit on these committees. I would be more than happy to switch to a different committee, ad hoc committee, perhaps budget. But it's a good opportunity to sort of track and follow what's happening in terms of the legislative platform. So anyways, it was a good year these past couple of years.
Yeah, and just to echo that, we served together this past year, and that was a great way to learn more about LAFCO too. So I enjoyed that. It does sound like there's interest for you to step away from it, and I'm fine with that too. And it sounds like Commissioner Mueller is willing to step up, as is Commissioner Leary. So I might go ahead.
Well, I would just like for everyone to say a couple things. So I think it's, in addition to be a learning experience, I think ledge is pretty important. Well, they all are important, but this one, I think, I guess really what I'd like to say is I think some experience would really play a role here. So somebody who has been on it in the past, or somebody who's actually been involved in taking some trips to Sacramento, or making calls with legislators, or meeting with legislators. I think that experience is really critical. I have certainly been with and I want to say something about the Cal LAFCO too. So with Cal LAFCO, I've been doing a tremendous amount of that, and it's an amazing learning experience to do that. And people I think sometimes I find them a little naive about legislation, and some of the stuff you'd like to get through is just not going to happen, and to know how the system works and who you need to talk to and how you need to line up the votes to make things happen. And, really being able to, have some experience working with different legislative advocates, or I think is really important here. And also, I know that one of the issues we're having on Cal LAFCO is that many of the individual LAFCOs are kind of taking the legislative, we meet monthly on Cal LAFCO for our legislative policy committees, and a lot of the different LAFCOs are just kind of cutting and pasting that. But we're really trying to emphasize that that's confidential because, some of the policies and our plans and our strategies at Cal LAFCO need to stay within Cal LAFCO and not get circulated around the state because it kind of blows our whole strategy. So that's not something that we should be doing. I don't really think we've done that in the past. So good for us. But anyway, so instead of, so if anybody's had, any experience, working with legislators on different bills or weighing in on those and writing letters, I think I would really like to see somebody like that kind of stand up. So I don't know, Beth, is that something you'd be interested in?
Well, I've served on this committee for 4 years. I've served on committees with Cal Cities. I think we've all, as electeds, have been involved in trips to Sacramento and doing all of that. So I think, and again, having done it now for 4 years, I might be a little more interested in moving perhaps to budget, but I'm open for either one. I want to be helpful on one of the ad hoc committees. I would be happy to wait until February so that we can make the right choices. But I would agree. I think it is, all three are important ad hoc committees. So trying to share the responsibilities, I think, is what we want to do.
Yeah.
Would you be willing, if I made the motion for myself and you to be appointed today, to accept that?
Well, I think I do know that Commissioner Leary is interested in the role too. So, and what I'm hearing from you is that you're willing to do something else, and you're interested in budget. So, I'm not sure that.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I think waiting till February to have is not going to set us back.
Okay.
But absolutely interested in trying to be involved on an ad hoc committee.
Okay. So it sounds like there's interest in waiting on those last two until the next meeting. Okay.
Sure.
Great. All right. And that brings us to 6C. Well, first, just make sure there's no public comment on that item. Okay. Moving to 6C, update on strategic plan and the work program and possible direction.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. One moment, and I will get myself ready. So this item will involve a brief update on the major projects in our strategic plan and work program. Quick note that your assistant executive officer remains out on leave with no firm return date. So your staff's been in a holding pattern since June, and we just have to wait it out a bit longer. More on that to come when we know more. So getting into the strategic plan, as you all know, there are 3 major overarching goals that we identified. And quick notes on each of those goals, where we're at. So the first item relates to the countywide water and wastewater and municipal service review, and essentially keep that alive and out in the public forum. And so the way your staff has been doing that is I've been having conversations with many community organizations and individuals, and have done a couple presentations, including for the Sierra Club a month or 2 ago. Also, there is a water consolidation group involving several LAFCO executive officers. They've been working in the background with a researcher from UC Berkeley. You may recall the report that was presented close to a year ago, maybe it was earlier this year, about it was from UC Berkeley about LAFCOs and water system consolidations, and what are some of the challenges at the state level and the local level. And so with that in mind, there is a joint letter with my name on it, and that's something the commission may want to ask me to take that off if you're not interested in having us participate in this. But there's a joint draft letter to the legislature essentially asking for an expansion of LAFCO powers in a way that would allow for water system consolidations to occur in a much more streamlined way, and just make it more feasible where there may be some real issues. And at the moment, we just have we have no tools to help some of the smaller systems that are privately run, for example. So that letter, I want to open it up to the commission as part of this item to, if you have concerns with being part of this letter, I did not provide a copy of that. I thought about it, but it didn't happen. So that is something we may want to discuss. Also, one more activity related to this strategic plan goal. I saw some of you last week at the Watershed Symposium. I wasn't able to stay for the full day as we had a late agenda posting. We were waiting on a couple items related to the audit, and so I had to run and focus on that a bit. But anyway, a lot of activity happening behind the scenes with water and wastewater that could advance our goals. The next big goal is getting the Fire and Emergency Medical Services MSR complete. And as you know, we have a consultant working on that, AP Triton. They have wrapped up all of their on-site interviews and data collection. Now they're doing the hard work of making sense of everything and distilling it into a report, which I'm hopeful will be presented in mid-2025. I don't have a firm schedule on that. As a reminder, this was one of the projects that your assistant executive officer was managing, and I have taken that on in addition to everything else, and have been doing my best to keep on top of the consultants and keep them moving forward. And so stay tuned. I'll continue to provide updates on this and keep it going as quickly as we can, but without sacrificing quality, of course. The next big goal is the concept of exploring greater LAFCO independence, and we had numerous lengthy discussions this year about that very topic. And where we're at now is I am sitting on draft amendments from the county, from County Counsel's office, draft amendments to our support services agreement with the county, and just simply don't have capacity to review that in a meaningful way at the moment. Staff is just stretched too thin. So that is certainly a priority. It's a hugely important project, and when I can allocate more attention to it, I will be on top of it, and we'll keep that moving. But that is encouraging. The county counsel's office has done their part to get this moving, so now it's on us. Then I'll shift to some of the items in the work program. Just going to focus on the studies. Those are the most significant activities that we undertake. And so the studies being municipal service reviews and sphere of influence reviews. We have some very important studies coming sooner than later. And of course, we've already missed our targets in the work program. Again, the work program, it's really meant to be it's our goal. It's not a firm schedule that we've agreed to meet, but we certainly do our best to meet those dates, but we've missed them on all of the studies. Part of the reason is that I have had conversations with affected agency staff, and they've agreed we should wait until after the elections are all said and done and the newcomers are seated and settled, since some of these relate to there are certainly seats that are going to be changing on some of these boards. And so the first one I'll talk about quickly is the Napa Sanitation District Sphere of Influence Review. I've provided brief updates over the course of this year on my activities discussing with Napa Sanitation District staff, county planning staff, and members of the community who are interested in getting public sewer service out to the Monticello Road, Vichy Avenue area. Cordero Steakhouse is interested, I've heard. A lot of interested individuals, but not quite enough organization yet to have a firm plan how we're going to accomplish this. But a lot of agencies and individuals agree public sewer service to this area to get them off septic systems would be a good thing for preventing potential environmental disasters. So that is just something I've been working on diligently for quite a while, and before you know it, there will be a report in front of you to consider. Another one in a similar boat is County Service Area number 4. We need to do their municipal service review and a sphere review. Their staff agreed we should wait for the new Board of Supervisors to be seated and allow them to be part of this discussion of farm worker housing and how that is financed publicly. So that also will be coming sooner than later. Just mentioned the Fire and Emergency Medical Services MSR status. That's hopeful for mid-2025. And then next is City of St. Helena, their municipal service review and sphere review, which has been the topic of ongoing discussion for the better part of a decade now. And so the work program contemplates having this report done in-house. That was a really great idea when we had 3 full-time employees, but with just 2 of us, it's just simply not going to happen in any quality manner. So what staff is hoping for is that the commission offers some suggestions for how to address the City of St. Helena report. The other reports staff can handle in-house, no problem. City of St. Helena is a different animal completely. We may want to hire a consultant to do this report for us, or shift back the timeline to likely 2026 for a draft report on that one. So that would be, if we're going to do it in-house still, that's going to take a fair amount of more time for us to get to. So with all of that in mind, really the main ask from staff is a discussion about the City of St. Helena report and whether or not you want to direct staff to return at the next meeting with a draft request for proposals to go out and seek a consultant, or if you want to signal that we're fine holding off a bit longer on this report to take our time. And then of course, a reminder, the other item you may want to discuss is there's that joint letter, which is not in front of you, but essentially it's asking the legislature to help empower LAFCOs and the state to achieve water system consolidations more effectively. So with all of that in mind, I will hand this item back over to the chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thanks. So just, I'll go to you, Commissioner Mueller, in a minute. I have 2 questions. So that letter, is that agendized so we can discuss it today?
That letter is not agendized, so look to council if there are any key comments on how we might work that into this item.
If it fits into any part of the strategic plan or work program, it can be discussed.
Great, and it does, I mean, and we've got water on here, so that's good to know. And then the second one is, before we open it up for a discussion, can you help us understand what the stance of the City of St. Helena is? Are they pressing on this, or any context there would be helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've only spoken with mainly their city manager about this, and so he is very much willing to work with us on the current timeline. I have not asked him yet about shifting timelines or switching from in-house to a consultant. Haven't had that conversation yet, but the sense I got was that he was very open-minded about working with us in whatever capacity we are looking for, as long as we wait until after the new year to get started.
Okay, that's helpful. Commissioner Mueller, I know you had a question.
So the question on the St. Helena topic, we have been, and I will admit I've been pushing a long time because this has been on our books a long time, and I've heard lots of different stories and they keep changing. So just to be full disclosure, if we decided that we were going to hire a consultant because we're very short staffed right now to do this, do we have any legal standing in passing along the cost to them and making them pay, attorney?
I think normally you'd put this into your budget that you'd call for. And so I might like to Brendan about your normal process for how you recoup the cost of these if it hasn't been specifically budgeted, but that would be the normal process.
Just to add a quick note that due to the situation with our staff, we're actually saving a fair amount of money. And that's something I meant to add into this discussion, is that we're not getting hit on our budget right now for
Okay.
positions. So
Good point.
we're accumulating funds that really should go to certainly some operational need. In this case, staff just needs some help.
Okay. That's a good point to kind of consider. So, well,
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question because I was wondering about the funding of it too. And I think what you're saying is even if we brought in a consultant, we've got the dollars because we're not spending them on staff time right now, even though we wish we were.
Right, exactly. I would have to guess as to what a consultant might ask for a contract. I don't know what the going rate is right now. I know some LAFCOs have struggled getting responses to their RFPs. I did, however, have a very encouraging conversation with a consultant at the annual conference in October who is has demonstrated certainly some competence and may be able to help us with this one, as this individual is looking to build a resume, and so that may be a real opportunity for us to get in early with this person.
Okay, great, thanks. So thoughts from the commission about either of those issues, the letter on consolidation of water systems and also the St. Helena situation. Commissioner Mueller.
so I just wanted to go to the letter because we had a Cal LAFCO Ledge meeting on Friday, and this letter actually came to us like slightly before 5 o'clock on Thursday. So it was a quick addition to our published agenda. So we took a look at it, and basically, and Brendan can certainly add more. So there was a graduate student and a professor at UC in Berkeley, and the graduate students, I think, thesis was that water is a right, and that basically LAFCO is the organization that can impose legislation to kind of make water available to everybody. And there were like a lot of interviews with different Cal LAFCO people as well as different executive officers. I wasn't involved in any of that. And then they, and after they did their work, the professor actually published something. And so there's a report. And then they went around to different executive officers and asked them to sign on. So when Cal LAFCO looked at it, we really didn't have much information about what they wanted except legislation. And I just wanted to say, I think we should be looking at the letter and looking at the report, because I think it's going to possibly be important for the policy committee, because a lot of people think that legislation is the first thing you go to and you just kind of get legislation and it becomes law. But quite frankly, there's a lot. Over 7 years that I've been on the Ledge Committee for Cal LAFCO, we've gotten just about 100% pushback for expanding any powers for CKH. I don't think there's much appetite for that. So I think there's a lot of avenues that we can take, such as policy. When we have policies, those can be really, important driving forces in us maybe wanting to try to make inroads into small water systems rather than the long, long hurdle of getting legislation.
Yeah, thank you. And I think from what I hear from you, and I think I agree, is that having the commission see the letter and the report might be a useful thing at a future meeting.
Yeah,
Commissioner Painter?
Yeah, I'm not prepared to say anything about a letter I haven't read. So, and it is obviously a significant issue for all the cities in Napa County. Water is a big deal. So I think moving this forward to get that information, to see those reports, is really important. So on that issue, I have a couple notes, if it's okay, to kind of run through. My first question is, this item says that we're going to provide direction to staff with respect to any desired changes to the work program. So can we be specific about all of this and in terms of changes today? Is that what you're looking for?
Good question, Commissioner Painter. I'm going back to my comment about the work program being more of a goal setter than a firm schedule. The only thing I was really intending with that comment in the staff report is that I'm looking for direction on the St. Helena, whether we do in-house or hire a
Okay.
consultant. We don't need to worry about changing the dates unless the commission would like to. We can,
Well, I think for the purpose of this meeting, there are changes that I'd like to discuss, and maybe we defer that to a later meeting to run through and fully update comprehensively the work program.
Mhm.
Specifically to St. Helena, I would absolutely, I guess my first question on that is, have we developed a scope of work for that?
no, not specifically, but it would just essentially a it's a comprehensive municipal service review that would follow state law, which requires us to address certain. We have to make written determinations. So that's really the focus of any municipal service review, is answering those
Right, right.
questions.
So I think moving forward with a consultant absolutely makes sense. When you look at the list, this was completed in 2008. It's clearly the oldest. But what I'd like to see is a scope of work that might come back in February that we could then send on to a consultant to try to prepare the study. And just since I have the mic just on the other two, I will just tell you, for me, I think the NSD SOI is also a big topic, and I think we may want to consider a consultant for that. I know you said staff is prepared to do it, but I think you've raised some significant topics that will be important. So I want to maybe think about that route, not to answer today, but think about that route for that one. And then thirdly, I'd like to hear from some of my fellow commissioners on this CSA number 4. Seems to me if that was completed in 2017, that's not even a 10-year horizon on that plan. I know the county is going to be updating their general plan, so I don't necessarily see that as a priority in work plan right now, but I'd like to hear from others on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Painter. And I think I would just point out that this agenda item heading is broad enough that I'm really glad you ran through that, because if you've made the notes and we're here, let's get it out. So thank you. Commissioner Ramos, did you have any feedback or input here?
I would just say I agree on starting with backwards CSA 4. That's not a very large horizon. It was just renewed, I believe, last year. Is that correct, Chair? I think it was last year. These are dog years. So it was just renewed last year by participants of the plan. So I don't even think that that's ripe for review in our consideration. So that's on CSA 4. I agree with Napa sanitation, and when we look at water, wastewater, that is, I do think, from a climate sustainability standpoint, this needs to be something that we look at diligently sooner rather than later, and to really take some actionable steps on our MSR on that. So I would agree that is one that needs priority and moving forward. Whether we go down the consultant route, I think that when we do welcome our new member and we have a full commission in February to discuss, I think it would be appropriate to re-agendize this and to really ask ourselves the question of what those parameters are on when we engage a consultant and when we don't. Because there's a lot of talk of consultants here, and budget items on consultants, and I think it would be great from a policy to give direction to the policy review committee on how we really define what is consultant appropriate and how that lines up with our strategic goals and priorities in each year. So how we assess bandwidth of staff, and then the budgetary implications of such a decision. So I agree, but I do also think that maybe continuing this conversation into February is appropriate with some additional guidance on policy review.
I think that makes sense. So I think what I'm hearing the suggestion as is to re-agendize this. And I think what I'd like to see based on the comments here is if we could get some staff analysis on the option of a consultant for both the Napa-San SOI as well as the St. Helena SOI, and kind of pros and cons for which we take out, and that would then hopefully inform a policy discussion. And I hear what you're saying, Commissioner Ramos. There's a little bit cart before the horse too, but given that we want these to move forward, so if that makes sense, that would be terrific. Commissioner Mueller.
And as long as we're on this very big topic, which actually starts out with the fiscal year 23-24, 24-25 strategic plan, I think it's time to start talking about our next strategic plan. And that would be a budget item as well. So can we add that to the chair's list as well?
Absolutely. All right. So do you feel, Executive Officer, that you've got all the information that you need at this point on this set of items?
Yes, Madam Chair. I've got
Okay.
copious notes, and I'm excited about all of this. A great idea to bring this item back in February with the full and new commission roster. So I'm encouraged by this discussion. Thank you all.
Great. I think the one thing I would add is that on both of those SOIs, any input you could get from the agency, the local agency itself, City of St. Helena and Napa San, I think that would be helpful too. All right. Thank you. So with that, any public comment on this item? All right. Then we will go ahead to 6D, California Government Code Sections and Pilot Programs Report.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. This item involves a report on the Commission's participation in 2 legislative pilot programs codified as California Government Code Sections 56133.5 and 56133.4. Both were authored by now retired Senator Bill Dodd, actually one when he was in the Assembly. And the staff report is rather succinct and recommends sending a relatively vanilla report to the legislature, which notably does not include an ask for a renewal of either pilot program. And just for the benefit of the public, these pilot programs both involve allowing a local government agency to extend their public services outside their boundaries and outside their spheres of influence under very unique circumstances. We used one pilot program one time to help the Carneros Resort and Spa receive public water service from the city of Napa. And there are a lot of nuances to that one that prevent any additional connections from happening using that same water line. Part of the requirement is that this is not growth inducing. Now, so that staff believes that pilot program was used very successfully, and that was a great solution to an issue that could have been problematic for the underlying land use. And so staff, up until the time when this agenda went out, staff had no reason to believe there was any reason to renew either of these pilot programs. But as luck would have it, a wrench may have been thrown into our recommendation, and it comes from our consultant for the Fire and Emergency Medical Services, MSR. They identified several fire service contracts involving local government agencies and them providing service outside their boundaries and spheres. So we're having a discussion of is this a problem or is it exempt under state law? We're not sure yet. If it is a problem that needs to be addressed through LAFCO somehow, it may actually require one of these pilot programs to solve it. But staff is not prepared to say that that's absolutely the path we need to take. I'm going to recommend that we keep the letter as it is and not rattle the cages at the state legislature asking for a renewal of something we may find out quickly we don't even need. And certainly there will be, we can find a solution long term. If this turns out to be a problem, I'm sure we can find a remedy, as we have with City of American Canyon and their water and wastewater services, which we came up with a unique solution there. And so I'm sure we could come up with something here if need be down the line. But I put that out there because if any commissioners are deeply concerned about this and want to explore it, let's talk about that and see if we want to change this letter before I send it into the legislature. So that's all I've got on this item. Happy to answer any questions.
Do we have a copy of the letter here in the report?
Should be, let's see if
Okay,
it
cool.
should be attached.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm not finding it. I'm sure it's here. Go ahead, Commissioner Khan. Thank you.
So I had a question earlier before the meeting because I wanted to understand if that the extension of water, city water to the Carneros, would that end when this pilot program ended? And the answer was no, that it would the pilot program would only affect new connections. I, for one, would like to actually have this not renew and deal with it on a case-by-case basis, because there are some opportunities I think that people will take as an easy way out, is my perspective. Because there are a few resorts that are sitting on county land and already get city water, but maybe not enough. So I think we need to look at maybe deciding on each one of those as it comes along. But I just wanted to make sure that the Carneros wasn't going to kind of get pulled out, that plug on them. So that's going to stay as it is. Thank you.
Yes.
Other comments or questions? Commissioner Mueller.
So I'll go back a few more years. So I think I may have been the only one opposed when this, when Dodd's bill, AB 402 came along. And the reason I was opposed in my vote was because this only applies to Napa and San Bernardino counties. And I even told Senator Dodd this as well. I believe that when we have laws going through for LAFCO, they should apply to all counties, all 58 counties, not 2. And in addition to this law, there was also a bill by Senator Dodd, and I greatly appreciate all the work he has done, but this is, have my LAFCO hat on now. There's also a bill that went through that only applies to certain properties within the city of St. Helena, not even just 2 counties. So I think we need to always really consider the bigger picture, because what happens is these bills don't get fully vetted. If it only applies to 2 counties, the other 56 counties just like, I don't care, it doesn't apply to me. So you lose that really good, robust vetting about whether it's a good bill or not. So that's a philosophy I certainly have. And I also think that with some of these things that, come through, that again, we keep talking, we're going to be taking more looks at our policy. So that would be something that whoever's on, I think it's Ramos and Gallagher on the policy committees, there's a lot that we can all solve by our policies. Again, you don't always have to have a law to kind of do that. And so if we have policies, we can point to our policies as we're making findings and decisions in Napa County LAFCO.
Thank you. Other comments? Commissioner Painter.
Yeah, I think one question first, and maybe this is for Commissioner Moeller. I'm curious, at the state level, have any other counties expressed any interest in this? Has there been any discussion to say, I mean, pilot programs can be a good thing, right? It can be a way to sort of test the waters. I'm just curious, has anybody else said, we would like to take this pilot program and apply it statewide? Has that conversation ever happened? And maybe staff can answer that question.
So great question, Commissioner Painter. An important part of the history of this pilot program is that it started as a statewide effort. And in fact, it was Keen Simons at the time was the executive officer here at Napa LAFCO. And he was heading up this charge, working closely with then LAFCO Commissioner Bill Dodd. And in the early stages, there was interest at CalAFCO to actually make this a statewide law. But over time, for reasons I'm not quite sure about, LAFCOs began dropping out and raising concerns. And before you know it, it was down to 3. And so Sonoma was originally in agreement to be part of this. And then something happened and they dropped out. So it ended up just being 2 of us for the pilot program. The other LAFCOs have not indicated any interest since this came into law 10 years ago, essentially. So I don't believe there's any statewide interest to bring this to everybody.
I was curious about that, I think. And then my only other comment is I think the letter is fine. It outlines the one request that we did receive, and that we're not aware of any additional potential requests under these particular government code sections. So while we may be considering more of this later, and we may be talking about it at a policy level, I would support the letter as drafted.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you. I did see the letter. It looks great. And because it just keeps it, and I appreciate what Commissioner Mueller is pointing out, that there's a lot of policy challenges with this kind of effort. But I like how you just kept it as, we don't need to ask for another extension. So, so with that, I'll ask if there's a motion to approve the sending of this letter.
So moved.
There's
Second.
a motion by Commissioner Painter, second by Commissioner Mueller. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, I did not ask for any public comment on that item, but do we have any? Okay, great. Then we're moving to item 7, Executive Officer Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to zip through my notes here in the interest of time. First, I want to thank Chair Cottrell for running excellent meetings all year. We had some difficult items come up with the LAFCO independence and the budget not going as smoothly as what we might be used to. And so excellent job, Chair Cottrell. Thank you for being our chair this year. And we'll be welcoming Chair Leary and Vice Chair Painter in February. And so then another quick note about staff being limited. As I mentioned earlier, we're keeping the lights on in the office. Everything's, all the bills are getting paid and the work is getting done that must be done. Although there are days when Stephanie and I feel like our hair is on fire, not gonna lie, but we're fine. So don't worry about us. But certainly we feel the lack of staff capacity. Quick note that I accompanied Commissioner Leary to a habitat conservation planning meeting in November to learn more about those efforts and see if there may be any relationship with LAFCO. I don't see any direct relationship with LAFCO at this time, but certainly it seems to be in line with some of our core interests to preserve natural working lands. So I'll just keep watching that, but not dedicating too much of my time to it. Also earlier mentioned that I had attended the Airport Land Use Commission meeting, which was on November 19th, met with their staff, and we're collaboratively working on the issue with spheres of influence. A note about our website. So Stephanie is helping me learn. There is a new law, and your council is also aware of this and helping us. I just got an email from you over the weekend, I believe, on this. So we are required to remediate all of the documents, all of the PDF documents, and that is not something we've done in the past. This is going to be a huge time sink, and so I'm looking at possibly bringing on an unpaid intern or maybe extra help somehow to do this so that Stephanie doesn't have to, because she does not have the extra capacity to take this on. This is going to be a serious process. And so there may be updates coming from staff at future meetings, or we may just take care of this. So keep that in mind. And also at the August commission meeting, Commissioner Mueller and others requested a future islands workshop that is on our lengthy to-do list. It hasn't dropped, but certainly at this time, we just don't have the ability to do that meaningfully. It is going to require a bit more capacity, and also we want to wait until the new electeds are seated, especially at the city of Napa, where all of the island issues really relate to the city of Napa, as you'll see in maps when we get to that workshop. And so we know we'll have a new council soon. Not too many changes, but some. And then I will be going out of the country in 1 week, so I'll be difficult to reach during that time. So Stephanie will be keeping everything running smoothly, and I'll be communicating with Stephanie regularly. We'll certainly, I'm not just off the grid this entire time that I'll be gone, but this is an example of why we have an assistant executive officer, because when I go on a vacation, I don't have a number two who is authorized to sign any potential emergency issues that may come up. The most common example would be someone has a failed septic system and needs immediate connection to Napa Sanitation District. That's going to require me to sign a letter and work with our chair expeditiously to address that. We don't have that ability if I'm gone, but I'll be checking messages as often as I can to ensure we don't leave anybody hanging if they desperately need service. And that's a policy issue. It goes back to the policy committee, and that's on my list. So timely decisions when we may not be able to meet, that's a real issue sometimes. And so with that's my list of talking points. So just want to wish everyone a certainly happy holidays, and it's been quite a year. I'm looking forward to 2025.
Just have a quick question. What's remediating PDFs mean? Sounds, I don't know what that means. It sounds hard.
It's so it's an ADA compliance issue of adding detail to, I believe it's the metadata, or Stephanie may be able to answer that better. She's the project lead on this one, so I'm going to let her have the spotlight.
Thank you. So it is when you take a PDF document and you make it accessible for any kind of handicap, be it colorblind, visual, hearing, and it's a time-consuming process. I did it for another LAFCO I worked for in addition to my other work, and it took 75% of my time. And we have 2,300 PDFs on our website. So I couldn't do it on my own. It would take forever. And this law is taking place in January. So there's going to be needs for like additional insurance and things like that if somebody decides to be a pill and look for websites that they say, oh, I can't access it, I'm going to sue. So,
Thanks, that helps.
yeah.
Thank you for the report and for all the work that you've done. I will now move us to item number 8, unless there are further questions. Okay. Are there commissioner comments we have? Okay, great. I just wanted to say thank you to staff. You guys have done a great job this year, especially being understaffed, so appreciate that. And for future agenda items, we'll discuss budget and policy committee appointments. We'll discuss the work plan and hear about some consultant options, removing one of the items, the CSA 4, and then an update on strategic plan for next February. So with that, happy holidays, everyone. And we'll see you in February, and we can welcome our new chair, Mr. Leary. And I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.